all these wonderful people have gathered here at my apartment. In honor of the chairman of our department, Mr. Darwin ma'am, the founder and former chairman, UGC BSR faculty fellow, Professor N. Ramachandran sir, are all our professors, teaching and non-teaching staff, and students. I request our Wali ma'am to welcome Professor N. Ramachandran and the audience.
Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to a special event of today's. It's nothing but celebration of 230th birth anniversary of Charles Darwin. As you know, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been being evolved. You must be knowing the Darwin finches. Those finches are called as the Darwin finches. To celebrate this auspicious occasion, department has invited a guest speaker, Professor N. Ramachandran, former chairperson of this department. He is a UGC faculty fellow. And on behalf of University of Mysore and from the Department of Studies in Genetics and Genomics, and on behalf of all of you, I welcome you, sir. I request to hand over the meeting. Invite senior faculties, Professor G. Subramania sir, and senior Professor Shivanandappa sir from Zoology Department. He is Emeritus Professor. I welcome you on behalf of University of Mysore and from the Department of Studies in Genetics and Genomics. Our young, enthusiastic, energetic faculties, I welcome Dr. Tejas, Dr. Somana, Dr. Pratibha, Dr. Chaitra, Dr. Kaushik, Spurti, Manjuna, and all guest faculties. And I would like to invite all research scholars, students, non-teaching staff, and workshop participants are here to grace this occasion. I welcome all of you. I welcome ICT people, and I welcome media person, and I welcome one and all for this auspicious occasion. We all join together and we celebrate 230th birth anniversary of Charles Darwin. Thank you.
To inaugurate the event, I request Professor S. Martina and Professor N. sir and Professor J. Subramania sir.
Sir, what happened, sir?
We all are a bit curious about the way, so I invite Rajnikant sir and his team to introduce us to the Darwin.
Unlike his evolutionist grandfather Erasmus, whose scientific verses were admired by his contemporaries such as Coleridge and Wordsworth, Charles Darwin was not known as a poet. But you will find out he was no less of a poet if you read the last paragraph of his famous book on the origin of species, where he says, "From so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved. Welcome again to the celebration of 213th birth anniversary of Charles Darwin. The day is celebrated as Darwin Day to commemorate the birthday of Charles Darwin on the 12th of February. Today we highlight the contributions of the man for science and to promote science in general. An interview with Charles Darwin is a skit written by Rick Coast, which was in the audio format, and we have made an attempt to bring it to the skit form. The skit is supposed to be informative, so if you get bored, please bear with us for about 10 minutes. Now, the Darwin Finches presents an interview with Charles Darwin by Rick Coast. From so simple, a beginning. Ooh. From so simple, a beginning. Ooh. Endless, and so beautiful and most wonderful. Endless, and so beautiful and most wonderful. From the being and our being evolved.
I have to just about do it. Tomorrow is the day. I should probably see if this thing works. Nobody is going to believe this. Okay, all right. Let me set this up so first thing in the morning I can work on it. Right. October 19, 1869. I think that's as good as any day can be. All right, oh, I need to sleep. Right, I'm up. So I think I've got everything I need. I have my notebook, my recorder. I don't think anything's out of place. So there's no time like the present. 1869. Here I come. Oh my God, I'm gonna get Charles Darwin. It's so cold. Mr. Darwin?
Yes,
Um,
of course. Whose door did you think you were knocking? Do come in.
yeah, of course. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Well, you know who I am. To whom do I owe the pleasure?
Right, I'm Usha. I'm from Mysore Gazette. I would like to,
Why aren't you wearing a coat?
well,
No matter, in with you. You here now and it is. Emma and children will be back soon. We have the house for ourselves. Let's at least sit down. Make yourself comfortable.
sure, thank you.
Brandy?
Oh yeah, thank you.
There you go. Ah, all right. So what is that you would like to know?
Okay, so you're well aware that your book has caused quite a stir this past 10 years. So I thought it'd be worth, for you to simplify it to the readers, straight from the horse's mouth.
Straight from the what?
Never mind, it's an old saying.
I can't say I have ever heard it. Or talk these days, I can't keep up with it. To be sure, I understand your request. You'd like me to better explain, better than I have done already, my life's work.
Sort of. A lot of people don't get it, or maybe they don't want to get it.
Very well then. Blue frogs.
Blue frogs?
Yes, if Finches won't do the trick, let us use frogs. You can write it down. Blue frogs. I see you are confused, and that's why you are here, right? To tear up the confusion. So let me help you. So let us imagine that we have a population of green frogs, and along comes a predator which has a taste for green frogs. What might happen to that population?
They'll all be eaten, right?
Yes, they will be eaten. Now let us imagine that one day a frog is born who is slightly different from its brothers and sisters. This frog's epidermis has a blue shade to it. What will happen now?
I'm going to say it'll escape being eaten.
Perhaps, but it is more likely that our little predator, the one who enjoys the taste for green frogs, will pass it by at first. It might eventually eat the blue frogs, but the chances are it will go after the green frogs first. It knows what they taste like. It's been eating them for years. So our little blue frogs might just avoid being eaten long enough to reproduce, perhaps more than once, perhaps more often than its green neighbors.
So there'll be more blue frogs.
Correct. As the green frogs are to be the one to be first consumed, they have less chance to reproduce. Our blue frogs, on the other hand, enjoy a slightly longer reproductive life. In time, they will make up the greater percentage of the population.
And one day they'll make up the entire population and will all be blue.
Let us now imagine that some of our little green frogs, the original frogs, were to move on to greener patches where they blend right in. And let's also say some blue frogs also travel with them. And there are hawks whose favorite menu item is frogs. What will happen to our little group of refugees?
They'll be eaten by the hawks.
Yes, only the blue frogs will be eaten. Why? Because they are blue, and these are the green patches.
And the green frogs are practically invisible.
Exactly. So the green frogs have the advantage here as opposed to the population of blue frogs in the first location, right? That's correct. But now here is another problem, and there is another predator here in the grass who eats everything that moves as long as it is not bigger than it is.
And you're going to tell me that our little green frogs are no better than this predator? What sort of an animal is the predator anyway?
The sort of an animal doesn't matter. For our purpose, we will refer to it as a posture predator. This posture predator is in its glory at first. All of these little green frogs running around, when you could find them, are the perfect midday snack. Until
what?
something marvelous happens. Not all of a sudden, but gradually, some of these little frogs aren't so little. They are little bigger than the others. When our pasture predator comes along, it passes them by it first so that all the smaller ones.
It's weeding them out, isn't it? The small ones. And the ones with the genes that cause them to become larger, those genes are passed on until they're all large.
The what?
The smaller ones?
No. After that, genes?
Oh, did I say genes? That's like an expression, like it's some property or something. I don't know, I guess.
Your manner of speech is so strange. Also, what is that in your hand?
This is a recorder.
What is a recorder?
Never mind, it's my alarm.
Ah,
So, was I right that eventually all the green frogs will be larger than the pasture predator?
most definitely. Now, I do feel the need to point out to your readers that this may never happen, or green frogs may never evolve into larger frogs. It may be that the predator wipes them all out. This has happened many times throughout the history. Many astounding and unseen creatures have perished because adaptation that might have guaranteed their survival never occurred.
So, in this scenario, adaptation happened and we now have two frogs. The large green pasture frogs and the small blue frogs in the original environment.
Yes, thus we have.
Two species.
I believe you'll do your readers a better justice.
What about your readers? Do you feel your book has done justice, to your views and your thoughts?
Haha, my book. Oh yes. If only I had a chance to go back in time.
Do you not have written it?
Oh yes. but I would have done a much better job. It's why I'm constantly revising it. In fact, I just recently completed the 5th edition and have already started making notes for the 6th. On top of all of this, I'm working on an essay in which I hope to clear up a lot of questions that we have been raised over years concerning our place in nature.
The descent of man.
How could you know that?
Oh, sorry. Was that it? It was just a guess.
Oh yes, well it should raise a few eyebrows.
And how do you feel about that? It's been 10 years since the Origin of Species was published, and the waves that it made have only gotten bigger. They've capsized many other beliefs about world and about creation.
How do I feel? Tired, very tired, sometimes anxious, but my work composes me to continue.
You think you'll ever stop?
Stop? Perhaps never. There is so much to say, too much we don't know yet. The mechanism for passing on the new modifications is still to be discovered.
Not everyone has accepted this either. And there are many people like Huxley and Gray who you can count among your supporters.
Yes, for that I am very grateful. My one hope and desire is that my ideas should long outlive me.
If those ideas are fit, they will survive.
Very well said. Now I must say, Emma and children are home.
Well, I must be going.
Don't be silly. We have plenty seats. You're most welcome to stay for dinner.
Really, I should go. I should collect my thoughts and start the article.
All right, this work is never done. Is that it?
I hope you understand.
All too well, all too well.
Charles?
Yes, my dear. We are just about wrapping up. We have a visitor, a young woman from Getchet, Miss Usha.
I'm pleased to meet you, Miss Usha.
Thank you, Mrs. Darwin.
Please call me Emma. Charles, did you ask Miss Usha if she would do the pleasure of joining us dinner?
I most certainly did. She politely declined. The girl has work to do.
Could you reconsider it?
I wish I could, but really, I must be going.
This weather?
Emma, dear, she is a big girl. She knows what is best.
Well then, it was a pleasure making your acquaintance, Miss Usha. Perhaps next time.
I would like that very much. She's a wonderful woman.
Oh yes, she is. She is home to me. Well, let's see you off. I trust you have enough for your article.
I do, yes. Perhaps we can do this again, maybe another time.
A sequel? Haha, of course, our door is always open.
Thank you, Mr. Darwin.
Charles.
Thank you, Charles.
That's very important. Now I call upon Manoj sir.
My teachers, my seniors, and my juniors. Pleasure to and a privilege to introduce my our guru of the department who has seeded the idea of establishing the department of genetics and genomics, being ranked as one of the academicians by Public Committee. He has served as an educationist, administrator, researcher of various national and international universities. On completing his PhD in '88, and he has worked as a research associate of ICMR and CSIR in Department of Zoology and Maths. Later on, he has served as a reader and lecturer in Department of Zoology, and later on completed his postdoctoral from McMaster University, Canada, and later on he came back and seeded the idea of establishing the Department of Genetics, and that is the vision which is being successful and the dream which is being seen on the present day. He has guided 29 PhD students and 4 are being currently guided, and he has chair and worked with establishing multiple committees and headed multiple national and international conferences. He has published around 280 research articles. He's been honored with multiple recognitions like C.V. Raman Young Scientist Award, EGST Award, GK Manna Memorial Award, Dr. Raja Ramanna Scientists Award, and he has served as a local secretary for the 103rd Indian Science Congress held in 2016. He's been honored with University of Mysore Golden Jubilee Foundation Award and is being elected as Fellow of Academy of Sciences and is presently serving as UGC BSR Fellow in the department. Please join me in welcoming Professor NBR for delivering the talk on natural selection or evolution by natural selection or a random walk.
You can stand here, sir.
Right up.
Hello, Namaskara. Good morning. I'm delighted to be here on the occasion of 203rd anniversary of Charles Darwin. I thank profusely the chairperson of the department, Professor Malini, and the colleagues, the students, for inviting me to give talk on this occasion. Just 10 minutes or 15 minutes ago, I was talking to Professor GSR, from the GS.
Just our students, yes.
Yeah. Hostile environment is very, very important for progress or to see evolution. In the hostile environment, I believe you know the meaning of hostile. Very constrained environment, constrained situation. The last 2.5 years of constraints of COVID made many new inventions, many new thinking when Dr. Malini became popular in the university and the country because in hostile environment she did marvelous work of conducting webinars, whatever she thinks, whatever the colleagues say, okay, we can do it, and did it. Even today, though we several times we spoke that because this again we had hostile environment, you know that schools, colleges would be closed, and say that no sir, students will come, we'll have it. So this is a way, any new things to happen, always remember the hostile environment. So with this, I'll start some of my readings and my ideas and some of our work which has been influenced by the Charles Darwin work. And to tell you, we are all from myself and zoology, Malini from zoology department. And Mysore University worldwide is known, especially for the evolutionary studies. If you recall the founder, professor of zoology department, M.R. Rashid Shetty, he had a link with even the topmost scientist in the evolution biology, Dobzhansky, Dobzhansky, I think, Dobzhansky, students Ayala, Stone, and Professor Rashid Shetty and Henry Krishnamurthy later was the chairman for several years. They worked with them and they carried the idea of neo-Darwinism of population genetics to the department. Even today, we are enjoying, we are doing that. I'm just making the lineage for the Mysore University, a global lineage, and this university is one of the profound effect on evolution. Many of the zoology faculty did research on many aspects of population genetics. So, and we even some of the hall and the zoology department we considered when we had a DST grants and evolution and genetics is a unique grant. For that hall, we gave the name of Dobzhansky Hall. Okay, so Dobzhansky, before that, my talk will be on 5 different headings. I'm just reviewing what I learned here, but most of you are aware of this, only I put it in my own words. That's all. Evolution and evolutionary thought, Darwinism, neo-Darwinism, some of the aspects are attached there, and how the evolutionary forces act together and make conclusions with the title what I have given. I hope I can complete within 45 minutes or so. I don't know how long it will take. If you interact, it may prolong 5 more or 10 more minutes. So, I don't think any biology students or biology faculty, anybody cannot forget this. Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. This has been written in 1973, published on, he has written an article, Dobzhansky, 1973, published in American Naturalist. And Dobzhansky lived, born in 1900 and 1975. And our department, the zoology department, made several conferences, seminars, workshops on that. So we carry the legacy of neo-Darwinism from a Darwin to neo-Darwinism, the Dobzhansky in a university in America. So I believe all of you know the definition evolutions. I'm not going to teach the definition evolution now. For example, your today mobile phone, a 10 years mobile, it has evolved, right? It's a non-living thing. The simple 15 years back and 20 years back, I didn't have a mobile phone. And just 15 years back, everybody has Nokia. Now, people are getting gifted, I hope you know, the iPhones. Variety of phones are available. Evolution of non-living things. So, evolution is nothing but a gradual process of change which leads to the origin of living and non-living things. And just to give an example of mobile phone, now Darwin or whatever we biologists can think of living things. Gradual process of evolution, and there's a change, it has to have a change. And today's definition of understand description for the evolution is change in the genetic composition of populations. All evolutionary phenomena is looking at the population. And also, evolution is one of the most influential concepts and affect almost all other fields of knowledge. It's not only in biology or science, it also Darwinism or Darwinian concepts are used in social science also. Again, Darwin put forth that evolution is nothing but descent with modification, change with a modification going on. So we can study the history of evolution by 3 types or 3 classes or 3 headings. One of the first is the period of speculations to 1790. That was the first period. Everybody who talks about the learned person, who are the rich people, who are the education, they are proposing and they talk something and they speculate. Okay, others people who are the inquisitive to learn and they learn and they just pass on. It's a speculation only. And our mythology, many kind of things are there. They say, oh, this is the way things are evolved. And work of Aristotle. Aristotle involved in all fields, not only in science, in social science also. His concepts. Then I hope you know Carolus Linnaeus, where the binomial nomenclature has created, and he made the fixity of species. They evolved hierarchy of the nature created. They are there. They will not be changing. I'm just putting that Carl Linnaeus there. He classified that order, the classes, and the phylum, and the kingdom, and so on. That is the first level of understanding evolution, evolutionary thought. The second one is period of observations and inferences from 1790 to 1900. Many of them observed and tried to interpret. Observed and tried to interpret. Here comes our Darwin. Even Yama did it, but this time was very, very wrong. Environment was not congenial for Darwin, though he made very significant contribution, but one or two lacuna made him not be successful. But Darwin, environment was very good. And welcome to that later. Again, Weismann, and Lewis, the mutation theory is proposed. All these are, they did the experiment of, they observed what is there in the nature and they try to interpret that. And also earlier the speculation, next was the observation. The third level is where we are all belonging from 1900 to date. Okay? Where the Hardy-Weinberg, the laws have been established 1900 beginning, and considering the population is a unit of evolutions. Then the one of the young leader who put forth, modified the Darwinian principles into neo-Darwin, adding several things, convincing the whole contemporary scientific world, that is Julian Huxley and others, contributors are Dawkins, Fisher, Halley, Stebbins, Jerome, and many other, Mayer, many other scientists. Each one is very, very unique in that. And J.B.S. Halley has some, we Indians have some touching with him because he came back from UK, settled in Calcutta. He has helped development of science, especially biology, in India. Okay, he died in India only, so he was profound effect on science in India like J.B.S. Halley. So again, the same thing, whatever I said, in different way, that the people have considered in different way. American Revolution, French Revolution, and American Civil War has happened in this 1750 to before 1900, and these are the one of the every steps is one of the monumental contributions, and where the evidences are contributed for even Darwin, the Wallace, even the Mendel, all those things are evolved one after another. One of the profound effect of Malthus' essays and evolution, essays on populations. Malthus, the publishes essays on principles of population, that has given very insight for the Darwin to think to make the origin of species. The whole book is. So I'm not going to detail all those things are there. One after another, these are the information. Any scientist, any students who wanted to learn the evolution, they will one way or other way, they will aware of all this information. Then only we can make a comment, we can make an understanding or writing on evolution or any biology classes. With having said the introductions about the evolution and evolution thought, now let me go very, very briefly about Darwin concept, how he built up the concept. Darwin is as we are aware, the wealthy family, well-educated family, and he has been sent to the medical school, and he left, and then finally his father allowed him to take off his natural side, naturalist, and he was being raised by his elder sister rather than mother, because mother died very early. It's a big family. Those are the days, the big family. They have their own well-to-do and farm, and they could able to do it like attending the regular schools. He was concentrating all his studies in his farm. So he got an opportunity to go for expeditions to study the nature. That has, I know you are all aware of this Darwinian principle that why creating with a naturalist beagle that made it to revolutionary hypothesis of where how life changes over time, and he could take several hundreds of observations. He made that is a profound 25 years. Whatever he collected, read, observed the phenotype, and tried to make notes on each one of them. He did several small notebooks and articles, and the books also. This 25 years of this. And later, after making observations and so on, he wrote articles, became scientists and authors of several books, and experimental evolutionary science. I hope all of you know he started from UK, here, England, it's gone to South America, and this became the natural laboratory for our Galapagos Islands. I hope you know 13 different islands from the mainland. He could absorb many differences, and they gave an insight to him that some constraint, if say there's something constraint, organism could evolve in a given environment, adapt to the given environment. Adaptation comes there. This idea, then again it came via somewhere here in around the New Zealand and this regions, Alfred Wallace also gone for expeditions, and he made an observation contribution that's also had a major effect on Darwinian contributions later. So these are the different ways of the Darwinian features observed. He made a conclusion of because limited resources in the continental because the continental the isolated islands, and they had a struggle. Whatever is available for thousands of years, they adopted these organisms. Adopted having different kinds of ways and new form in the struggle. They selected and new forms of form here. That is the one which is good for them to adopt there. They have been selected. So Darwin's expedition and 25 years of studies, all his observations, and he made the notes, whatever he observed, he concluded that over productions of the offsprings, there are nature's produced variations. Variations are there in the species, nature, and there are struggle to get complete the food space and the weight and the water, and the one which is struggle, they survive, and the survival of the fittest, as you already aware of those, that is the natural selection, and that make the others different, and leads to the modification. The new species arise from the ancestor. This is the whole concept of Darwin, whatever observed, meticulous observations. It is the knowledge, available information, whatever he could able to understand. They collected the books from the library, whatever they understand, he made the time when Darwin put forth his idea was very, very good. the environment is very good. People try to understand that, and he has to talk, put forth his idea about against the church, and that was a very congenial environment for him. So, along with the Wallace also, he has sent an essay for Darwin because he's a rich man, learned person, to ask him to comment on that. Then the same idea, even better idea than Darwin, Wallace, in short, he had given that, and Darwin read that he was some guy somewhere in the remote area. He was giving the same idea of what I from last 25 years of thinking. And he has an advisor, that's Charles Lennon, and he discussed with him. Charles Lennon said, no, you should go for it, publication. And now look at the Darwin gentlemanship there. He would have said, like many of the, at least some of the scientists say that, oh, I have done this, I have done the monopoly, they would have done it, but he has given importance to the Wallace, and including Wallace's idea, Wallace's name. He first presented in the Linnean Society. That was a time when any new university, even Mendel presented in the Linnean Society, the contemporary scientists will comment on that as well. So Darwin presented there, people who were there, some of them could able to understand, appreciate, oh, okay, go ahead with this. And he started, after presenting that idea, people are less comment, but more enthusiasm or the supporter were there. And he took 18 months to complete his Origin of Species, the book. Then Darwin book is the title is Origin of Species by means of natural selection and or preservation of favorable races in the struggle of life. This is the title he has given for his book. And when he published that book also, he was looking for anybody talk about any newspaper, any news coming there, and we are discussing with Darwin. Lennon, people are not, I'm not getting any kind of support, any kind of people are telling about that. Then they said, his well-wisher said that, no, make one page of abstract, publish that this is the concept of made, published in a paper, and he published that one page abstract of the whole book, and it said for 24/11, 1859, in the same day, all the 1,000 copies, 1,000 or 5,000 copies, whatever you made, every copy is sold out, and it was in vain. Everybody appreciated. We have revolution now. We have scientific revolution. We got the answer for the origin of life, origin of species, how it changes, and then everybody accepted the Darwin. Then the Darwin idea that natural selection is the major force for the changing from one form to another form and new species to form. In Darwin's own word, in Darwin's book, what he has written, this is a simple definition what is given for natural selection. I want you to read along with me. Natural selection is daily and hourly scrutinizing throughout the world. What is scrutinizing? The slightest variations. Natural selection is scrutinizing throughout the world, rejecting those that are bad, preserving and adding up all that are good, silently, insensibly working every time. 24 hours is working whenever and wherever opportunity offers, at the improvement of each organic being in relation to its organic and inorganic condition. So natural selection is working every time, and that is the only selecting the best one and rejecting the bad one, and bad feature or unfit were being eliminated. That was the Darwinian contribution. But nature has all these kind of variations. So to make the Darwinian principles short here, and he also after 60 years of 40 years of understanding, people appreciated, and also real scientists were there. They are not completely agreeing what Darwin said, that also whatever Darwin said is fine, but there are a lot of limitations are there, and they say no mechanism to explain the natural selection. We just simply cannot say nature has introduced all the variation and the natural selection. Okay. How natural selection works, how it has been selected, simply saying that's not. And he copied the artificial selection. Similarly, he tried to report that, and he was not aware of any genetics of genes. Look at that. When Mendel put forth his last Mendelian principles, which year? Any idea? Not in the genetic department, right? All of the genetic department, when Mendel put forth this idea, his last 1865, Mendel's laws has been established, but Mendel, the principles were rediscovered in 1900. Oh, you are thinking only real discovery, not the Mendel put for that. 1865, what he is presented? 1859. After that, his problem even was not able to understand what Mendel's telling that they are both parallel. The contemporary scientists almost they are parallel, they are not able to understand what Mendel said that now. My idea is the one with, and no idea how variations are generated and passed to the next generations, and are not aware of the non-adaptive evolutionary process. That's the genetic bit, and he considered individual as a unit of evolution, because domesticated horse or dogs, he said that they selected a good breed, the breeding, and they selected the one. He thinks that nature also does a better one, and he simulated that, and that he thought that the evolution is an individual process. This is some of the limitation he had. We cannot say it's wrong. With the available information, available time point, he could able to make this. Well, so this leads to the birth of neo-Darwinism, where we can study the neo-Darwinism in three headings. One is the romantic period of Darwinism, 1860 to 1903. Many of the supporters are agreed. It's a wonderful work. It's one of the greatest achievement in the scientific world. There's a extreme enthusiasm of Darwinism in UK, especially Thomas Huxley, Herbert Spencer, George Romanes, and in USA, David Starr, Darwin, Asha Gray, and in German, the Haeckel, Alice Weismann, many the European countries as well as in USA, they appreciate the Darwinism. 40 years they have created, okay, this is the one they follow. But there are some of the scientists where they have agreed the other principles, and then when 1900 Mendelian principles rediscovered, they think that the variations caused by different one, not by the nature itself is not there, and they could able to explain some of these features. The second period to understand the neo-Darwinism is the period of reactions for Darwinism. They say that criticism started there. No, whatever he said is that you cannot agree, but we have more other kind of evidences where the real discovery Mendelian principles, work of Johnson theory of inheritance, and mutation theory of dividends, and population genetics, where our Hardy-Weinberg mathematicians put forth that how population is maintained in equilibrium in nature. The allelic and genetic frequency from one generation to next generation remain constant if there is no other evolutionary forces or destructive forces are acting on that, and that is the one more convincing for all the scientists to appreciate that. And I hope you know the Lamarckian, Hardy-Weinberg laws. I avoid some of the derivations, some of the classification derivations where the mathematics is also very, very important to understand biology. They started even through the Mendel as well as the Cheval Wright, even the Hardy Weinberg, they contributed. Now, without understanding mathematics, we cannot understand more detailed biology or evolution. That's also at least minimum mathematics one should understand. Third, the period is the modern synthesis, period of modern synthesis. So 1900 to 1935, it's a sprouting of many new concepts with evidences, observation, experimentation, evidences, and this opens the facts of the evolution and scientific evidences were plenty. Many of them are contributed. These are the James who contributed for neo-Darwinism or new concepts of understanding Mendelian principle. Now comes the genetics, genetic basis of evolution. Gazanzi has written Origin of Genetics and Origin of Species, 1937 is written book, this book, and George Simpson's 10 modes of evolution, the steppings, variations, and evolution in plants, genetic theory of natural selection of the Fisher, and Ernest Mayer, the systematic in the origin of species. Julian Huxley, he was a young fellow who integrated all this work together. Then let's modify the Darwinian principle as a neo-Darwinism or modern synthesis. He took the lead and he finally birth of neo-Darwinian principle, respecting or taking the Darwinian natural selection, adding all the whatever the Latin or whatever limitation Darwin had, adding the explanation. 1942, Julian Huxley wrote the concept that is evolution in modern synthesis. He used the genetic research with Darwinian natural selections to produce the title of this. The concept is synthetic theory of evolution. So we call it neo-Darwinism, and also another term is the biological theory of evolution. So almost all the contemporary scientists have accepted this, agreed that Darwinian principles have been modified and neo-Darwinian principle. Some of them are coming with new idea, new example. They say, yes, add whatever you have, add here, add here. So after reading all these things, the biochemists generally say that everybody is right in evolution. If you say something, you are also right. If you say something, you are also right. But in biochemistry or whatever you say, the gel this produces, the next time also with the same condition put, the same gel will produce. But in evolution, everyone has a different kind of experiments. Sometimes they talk evolution is everyone has the evidences, but let us put it that evolution or biology is a dynamic. Even new example, new experimental examples, experimental evidences are coming out for the evolution to understand the biology. That's why for the biological material to understand the biology questions, the scientists from engineering section, medical section, or the physical science and chemical science, they are coming and they are addressing the issues because biology is dead. Let us put it this way, not in the other way. The evolution is has a profound effect on the vision of any field of science. So modern synthesis and summarizing that the evolution occurs in populations. They agreed the Hardy member principles, and evolution is not an individual phenomenon, and people have studied. Mainly they use Drosophila contributed a lot to understand about the evolutionary principles. And Gazanzi contributed a lot. And populations can have a change in gene or allele frequency, and all populations are phenotypically polymorphic, and new alleles can also be contributed by the reproduction, by the recombinations, crossing over during sexual reproductions. There are new alleles also can be added, and all these are put together and modern synthesis of evolution theory has been. The model has been formed, and they summarize that how even more detail, more crisp, that what are the forces for evolutionary evolution? Evolutionary forces are we classified mainly. There are many other main forces for evolution. Is the directed process or deterministic process are called mutations, migration, selections, and the random process are the genetic drift. People have done the experiments and they also said that you cannot ignore the genetic drift. That made me to give my title this kind. I'll come to that little later. So the same evolutionary forces can also classify into two levels. Variability producing forces means the mutations and the gene migrations are introducing the variation. If the mutation occurs, the gene frequency changes, and a new individual comes to the population and percolating the gene there that also contributed the variations in that particular populations. And the variability sorting out forces are the natural selection. Natural selections select the which is the best fitted in the given environment. That is the one given genetic drift. Whatever is the drift, the individuals are there. They are the one much better to establish the form of species of the life forms. So let me briefly explain about the evolution and understanding of the mutation. I'm not going to teach anything about the mutation here, but how mutations have been taught are taken into consideration for to understand the evolution. What is mutation? Anybody is here to tell that sudden change is the mutation? Because in PUC textbook are written like that, many people say that sudden change, sudden change. Sudden, it says it's not sudden, it's a heritable change. Any change or random change in organism, it's a heritable change. Okay, can form new early and mutations in reproductive cells. That's what the heritable change can pass into the next generations. Increases when the mutation comes there, population, the variations in the population of the gene pool increases. Heterozygosity increases there. For example, these two into the cross and new mutation and brown colorations appear like this. Mutation introduces the variations in the populations. There are a variety of types of mutation, not the one what you are studying with some kind of conventional method. What I'm talking here, mutations can be classified by cause. Spontaneous mutation, induced mutation. What are spontaneous mutations? Natural occurring mutation. What is the frequency of natural occurring mutations? Anybody aware of it? Spontaneous mutations in nature, generally 1 in 1 million to 10 million. This has been studied in bacterial population. That means mutations are very, very rare, it's spontaneous. But it can be induced by chemical the physical agents like radiations or chemicals or even biological agents that transpose we can induce even 10% out of 110 individuals have a mutated phenotype. It's possible. And mutations at the site can be classified. If it is somatic cell mutations, say end up with the tumor, cancer, and somatic cancer. If it is germ cells, inherited, it passes generation. Any region genome mutation can occur. They cannot say, oh, it will occur today here in this in her genome or in the genome. Anywhere in the genome, coding, non-coding, flanking, repetitive, wherever is there, it can. Even mitochondria also can occur mutations. Right. By the function, it can be reverted, you can revert the mutant. There are the crosses in the microbial as well as the drosophila, they can do the reverted. Lethal mutation, it can cause lethal mutation. In conditional lethal mutation, different time point, different temperature, you can maintain them also, or in heterozygous condition, you can maintain the lethal mutation like BWS, that is the curly prism, the example of drosophila lethal mutations were maintained in Drosophila, curly prisms, and loss of functions. Some of the genes have lost the functions and they will not make any protein and they end up with the diseases. gain of functions, some of them are gain of function going for some of the oncogenes have become proto-oncogenes become oncogenes, they started repeated production of the products, they end up with the matters. Okay. So by function can also be classified by fitness. Some of the mutations are beneficial, some of the mutations are harmful, some of them are neutral, they occur in the third codon of the genetic code. They are in the placentation and not by size, also broadly mutation can be. Say point mutation, one nucleotide substitution and transition or transversion and so on. It can have single nucleotide polymorphism, both segment can be mutated, CNP can say, even chromosome or Down syndrome and so on. So broadly is a mutation in the genetic changes that occur from the side. So having said that, so now let me directly go to how mutations are important for evolution. They are the raw material. If there is no mutation on the first origin of the life on this earth, and there only one form of life will be there, they would have any kind of wave, any kind of disease, all would have been eliminated. New forms have been formed there. So mutations are raw material somewhere with all the secondary cell coding mechanism of cellular mechanism of replication, transcription, translation, even the mutation can occur. They are the raw material for that, for new variation of the native. So mutations are said to be accidental. They are not, no one has said that we transfer here. Accidental, maybe because of the radiation, because of chemical, or because of failure in some enzyme type. Mutations are accidental. Undirected, they are not okay, they are not direct into this gene or this DNA, this replication. No. Unintended, there is no intention of that. And it's a random process and also it's a chance process. In a sense that, so we can derive them, there are rare exceptions to the regularity of the process of DNA replication. They are rare exceptions. DNA replication, you know that all the machinery, all the enzymes, replicosomes sit there, they will not allow anything. Even then, 1 in 1 million, 10 million mutation occurs. That made the evolution of organisms. There is no way of knowing whether a given gene will mutate today at this point, at this gene, at this chromosome. No one knows that. It's a random process. They are unoriented whether or not they are adaptive in the environment in which the organism lives. They are unintended, unoriented, they just occur randomly. Same mutations may be deleterious, harmful in one environment and another environment is adaptive. For example, the wool or the hairs of the wolf and the turtle, and if they cannot survive. So the mutations are rare and they are very essential for the evolution. They occur in the DNA sequences. Another, the variable influence concept is the gene migration. Diffusion of genes into the population through migration is referred as gene form or gene migration. And every organism has their own home base, including plants. Polar bears, they cannot go for thousands of kilometers. They can go for some kilometers or something there, but every atoms have their home base. What is the home range of a Drosophila? Drosophila? What is the home range? Means how many miles it can fly? The authorities recorded the flight in the Colorado forest that the home range for Drosophila fly is 1 mile, they say, around 1 mile. They can go, Drosophila from our department, if you leave here, maximum it can go 1 mile here. It can go up to here, this side, can they go to or somewhere else around there. And this way, that's not, it cannot go more. Now with this kind of the traffic, it may not go also in forest they can. So that means every organism has, every animal has the home range of some of the elephant tiger come to the village because we explore the forest there, they come to the village. So every organism has the home range. And but there are systems like the basis for gene flow is sporadic movements. The migration, the fish migration, bird migration, you heard that also. That's there. Another, the population pressure, reproductive pressures. In a herd, in a monkey herd, there are four young monkeys are there. They are not allowed because only the king is the one made all the individuals, all the females are there. Then it will go explore the next herd there. It will fight with them. It will make them reproductive because of this hormonal instinct for them. They will go and fight with them. This is the kind of the gene migration can happen. So now it occurs when immigrants add new gene into the gene pool. In the migrant there, it has to make their reproduce their produce progeny, then the progeny should carry the gene. That is the gene pool is changed. And immigrants remove their gene pool because their new individual coming and mating there is no individual not there, and that population, the frequency will be reduced. So this migration of gene flow serves as a cohesive force preventing this formation of many small populations. Otherwise, would have more species there. Even sometimes it reduces, but however, it ensures the beneficial mutation which arises one population may be based on the remainders are not there. So the migration depends on how the propensity of the migrant there, how well it contributes for the gene pool. So the two what we have discussed are mutations and the gene migration are contributing the variability in a gene pool and the populations, and the sorting out by the natural selections. So now I wanted to make the distinction between the Darwinian natural selection and neo-Darwinian natural selections. Darwin knew that natural selection was the central principles of Darwinian theory of evolution and change. He used the artificial selections to and simulated that nature also played the same role. And Darwin said that natural selection is a consequence of struggle of life like war, aggression, hostility between the races. And Darwin was not able to justify the sources of variations on which natural selection works. And Darwin viewed the natural selection as a mortality rate, but natural selection eliminated the bad one there, selected the good one or the most fitted one. And he considered one of the problem here is to consider the evolution or the individual is a unit of selection and the evolutions. These are the idea thinking of Darwin in a given time point where he was taken artificial selection, he put forth that and in his book. Neo-Darwinian, after 40 years or 60 years of understanding with the genetic principles of variety of evidences, they put for the population is a unit of natural selection and evolution. Natural selection is an inevitable outcome of 7 characteristic features of population. One has to understand what is population, what is there in the population, what are the features of the population, what traits are there in the population. 7 features like genetic variability, genetic recombination, hereditary continuity, capacity for mutation, excess of reproductive capacity, integration of the genotype, and limitation of the gene pool in the population. These are the characteristic features of the population. They try to put forth the neo-Darwinians and they say that. And also, some believe that natural selection is diverse in operation. Say this: the dark force, is the creative agents, and active power. In a Darwinian field, but it is not necessarily has none of these qualities. It is no more than a statistical measure of the difference in survival or reproduction among the entities that differ in one or more characteristics. And finally, they say natural selection is not caused by differential survival and reproduction. It is we have to be stressed here. It is the natural selection is the differential survival and the reproduction. If two Drosophila species are there, you calculate the rate of development or any of the fitness character, the one which is fitting better, that is the survival of the differential reproduction. That is the natural selection in comparing population. So natural selection in the near order is the differential survival and reproduction is the natural selection. So it applies to the not only in all nature, not only to the genotype and phenotype, and we have already said that natural selection is another force that operates for speciations, and today natural selection is expressed in genetical terms as survival of the genotype, or the success of the genotype is the natural selection. So you believe the mode of natural selection, how they are there, the pressure of population, depending on the what kind of genotype the population are there, end up with the stabilization selection, direction selection, or descriptive selection. If they are not fit, the character water selection is not fit there, the either side extreme will be selected that not going to be that. Many of you might have studied in high school, PUC, or degree, even now also they are going to teach you next semester. So to summarize the natural selection, limited resources, organisms produce more offsprings, and environmental factor all leads to the competitions and the fitness and genetic variations in the organism. All this helps for the differential reproductive success of a population, and that leads to natural selection. So natural selection is very well defined now to quantify. How do you quantify the natural selection, the fitness with the near order? So the last concept is the random genetic drift. What is random genetic drift? A change in the allele frequency in small population. With a small gene that also change the allele frequency. It is a random process, as I already told you, and it's a sampling error. In this whole population, if you consider as a large population, select only this carbon. Only female will be there. Allow them to reproduce. Next generation, what happens there? Oh, the one male is there. So then allow only the one carbon there. Only one beta 6 are there. Allow there. So the individuals are not, both males and female. That is the sampling error in the genetic drift. The strength of the genetic drift increases as the population gets smaller. So small individuals, few individuals, the genetic drift, the effect is small. So for example, in a large population like 1,000 individuals are there, alleles carrying the right here, you are considering how the frequency of the red allele passing to the next generation. 1,000 are there, 10%. So one generation. Next generation, 50% of them are dying, and 50% pass to the next generation. Then they 450 by 5,000, then the 9%. Is a large population have a small effect, only 9%. Look at the small population, is already told here. Only 10 individuals are there, only one individual of this red allele, they carry 50% there. That is not selected in the next generation. Completely the allele is eliminated there. The change is very drastic. Next very few scientists give importance to the genetic drift, or otherwise majority of them are agree or support natural selection, but this also one has to consider when you make the population or what kind of studies you are doing. Effective population size in genetic drift by computer simulations. If you do thousands of simulations in a large population, there will not be varying in the population size. With a small population, it may eliminate here, or it may have maximum there. So the diversity and the changes are more in small population. The allele frequency changes more compared to the large population. This is also one of the live example of the northern elephant sheep. They have undergone the bottleneck phenomena, and here there are 4 different varieties were there, and here only 2, and finally there are only 2 of them selected as what is the phenomena working there. Constraints in the environment also make the population only few to be survive. In the few whatever survive, 1 or 2 varieties are there, they perpetuate generation as drastic changes. Is also seen in the cheetahs as well as the both ancient and modern human population also we could see a major genetic effect. One of the examples I will take next is the founder effect in the Amish population. They have been in 1790 they have been persecuted from Germany. They moved to the USA, Pennsylvania, and a small family established there. And the small family had very few individuals. Only inbreeding is affected. In the end of the day, genetic reason, more of the individuals genetic reason, short arms and leg, and extra fingers, and some of them have more of an artifact than other. And this is the Amish population is almost like when you compare that to the German as well as surrounding the Pennsylvania, and there are drastic changes in the gene pool, in the gene, or more of genetic defects are there. This is one of the classical examples we see next. Evolutionary effect of genetic drift. So to summarize that, genetic drift results in an eventual fixation of one allele and loss of all the other alleles. If the forces are not working in a neutral system, think that only genetic drift affecting the small population, working in small population. So now the evolutionary forces, all the evolutionary forces are working in throughout the day, throughout all the 24 hours in all the population. The frequency is varying there. Okay, now for experimental purpose, all other forces are not working, only genetic drift are working. Then the allele changes, only one allele is selected, others have been lost. As one allele drift towards fixing that allele, others are lost, heterozygosity in this population is lost, decline. When the heterozygosity decline, only one kind of phenotypes are there, the inbreeding is more there. Like South Indians have more of inbreeding effect in consignment marriage is more in especially South Indian, Karnataka and Andhra. Okay? And inbreeding depression and even reduce more of disease gene effect and residual diseases, and even the reduction in the population size, they reduce because they have not reached the reproductive stage, they have eliminated that lot of problems. Ultimately, the evolution phenomenon called extinction vortex. So this inbreeding effect, the depression leads to the extinction of the whole organism, that the whole group itself is possible in thousands of years compared to the large population. So drift also operate on alleles that are affected by selection. So they also influence the allele. So natural selection selected some of them. They also drift. If they are only few individuals, they undergo inbreeding and they also affects. So all these forces work in nature simultaneously. Some of them are noticed, some of them are not. So large population requires more time for the fixation of allele. Doesn't mean that some people argue that genetic drift or this kind of phenomenon will not work in the large population. You say large population. Large population also they will not have random mating. Random mating is a problem. So with having said all the phenomena there, and we also from our lab from last 30 years also we also contributed rapid evolution of the Drosophila species where in 1983 we started the crossing of the Nasuta and Albumitons and few flies were taken, we crossed them, then we maintained them. Now we are in the 850th generation we are maintaining. From my PhD work now, it has generated for another 20 students, my students and also Raghunath students and Upendra students also, they are working on that. And what I'm telling that the small population, I just crossed my mind from my PhD work a few 2 or 3 pairs of the flies that cross, we got. Even now, Kaushik has started them, Nasrud and Arjun that cross them, they are not able to get outside of this one. So it's not repeatable in a small population. A drastic change, what I have said that yes, the small population genetic tape may not be the same kind of things. So we have about the lot of studies have been done just and make this also can be one of the example of because we are from 1983 when maintaining that and we are working lot of other situation also. One of the paper when we send that they say that you might have a bleeding depression because your lights are maintained in the laboratory bottle. We said that 4 bottles take mix them out. Even then also Mosaic has started treated with the patient and so on. For population studies, they are not good now. Only for other genomic studies or any other studies. So I'm not going to tell all our work there. That is the outcome. Many people are going to be very costly. That who are the people involved for this the psychosis studies. So now I'll get into my title now. What made me to give the title? How evolution forces work together. As I told you, all these forces are work we may not able to record. We may not know them. For example, let me take one here: migration and selections. A strong individual migrating to the neighboring population will perpetuate his gene, remain all the females in the population, and a strong selection will be there. They're not allowing any of them, made they are talking about monkeys and this kind of organism, are not allowing any of them to fight with that, kill that, or not allow them, and it makes them the success rate of the selection is more in a small migration, a strong migration. So whereas the moderate selection, moderate migration, with a weak migration, with everybody has migrated there, then the population is not a strong one, because when more individual, more population, more individual population migrate there, that is not the kind of selection will not much there. So let me take mutation and natural selections. As you already know, mutations are very slow, very low frequency, 1 in 1 million or 10 million, and each organism has many genes, and each population has many individuals. So if you pull all of them on, then there is more mutations in a population gets. So mutation occur in the population how subjected to the natural selection. Whatever the mutations are there, the strong mutation in the given adapted to the given environment, like what Darwin said, they will be subject to natural selection. So natural selection favor those variants useful at a given time, in that particular time, regardless of their eventual value, and allelic variants that occur in the substantial frequencies in the population, therefore adopt. So mutations will be there, and the positive mutations, we say positive selection will be there on this mutation, they will be adopted in the population. So mutation selections work together in this manner. So selection always tends to suppress the mutabilities. If the deleterious are there, they will not be selected, they will gradually eliminate. So now the way that Darwin said that bad mutations were eliminated or bad organisms are not fit for us eliminated, it is not so easy. And explain that. Most mutations are generally yes, and natural selections acts to remove them from population. Yes, already told you. So deleterious allele persists, however, because mutation continuously produces them. Mutation is not only today. Mutation like natural selection, they are also occurring every day. More genes are there, more individual population, though they are very rare, they will be there in the population, they will be there in the environment, they will be there in all organisms. Mutations also be there like in natural selection. So, when the rate at which the deleterious alleles are being eliminated by natural selection, similarly mutations are also added to the population every mutations will not be having. That means there will be we cannot eliminate the bad mutations in the population because mutations also produce randomly and they will also produce the population. Selection also works for the good one, so there is a balance between mutation and selection. We cannot eliminate the bad or the bad mutant one. They will be there in the population. So now let us take all these three together: mutation, drift, and the selections in the populations. Migration is a small amount, so that also migration is a mutation. So many theories of evolution assume that natural selection leads to the population to achieve the optimum level of adaptations. Natural selection is the one, select the better one, adapt it. Yes, good. It holds good, that's no. But however, mutation introduces harmful, not only harmful, even beneficial also, but we are not about harmful. The beneficial one is there, the natural selection will operate more on them. Harmful mutations also are in the population, they can become fixed by random genetic drift. In a small population, in those harmful individuals are there, harmful alleles are there, they will be fixed in those populations like Galapagos Island population. They fixed it because a random genetic drift. Only few individuals are there in the drift on the isolated population. Therefore, natural selection, we cannot say always will select wins there, simply cannot produce the best of all possible population because genetic drift in a small population also encourages or fixes the relative expectations. So, random walk hypothesis, the mathematicians put forth, there are many articles in 1974, 2004, 6, I read several articles. More of derivations are there, I just make it very simple. This the null model of symmetrical random walk here. Random walk cannot be symmetrical. Random walk symmetrical means they are random walk and symmetrical it cannot happen because they are random. Okay, it cannot be accepted. So symmetry will not accept result. Any random walk is asymmetrical. So random walk we don't know that it can go this side or this side or this side or there only they stay and stop. So mathematicians they can make it very very simple here. Have long debated the random walk hypothesis. How they put forward how to predict a drunken person will end up if they just wander around at random. A drunken person is there, he is heavily drunk, he doesn't know where to go and which side he goes. It cannot be symmetric random. Okay? It's somewhere in the place. So random walk is very, very difficult to predict that how it happens. So that's why random walks reliably, they have made a simulation studies also, and also they compare that the random reliably simulate all the features like the fossil records, the jumps we have, the trends and irregular cycles, whatever the punctuality, all those things, it simulates the random walk. Maybe sometimes the random drastic changes are there. The evolution is not very gradual, even punctuated also evolution that support the random walk supports that. So now the questions we can ask: is genetic fitness predicted? Darwin view of descent with modification indicates that genetic differences pass into the next generation. In a population, we have mutation, genetic drift, and migration. Even sometimes the co-evolution of the other species are they co-evolve. They are shading the food and they evolve. These four concepts are there. Therefore, evolution has its own random walk due to things like mutation and genetic. So mutation and genetic drifts, it will not make the selection is more proponent here. This contributes that they will have own random walk we cannot say mutation, the selection is always comprehensive. Okay, so what my conclusion is that both selection and random walk, both in a population, how small population, what kind of environment is there, that also depends on that. We may not be able to predict that, oh, this one evolved this way. It's very, very difficult to predict. So, this has been said long back. Many people ask the questions in the synthetic theory of evolution. They say that yes, it is not stopped there. Any new evidence or new experiment can be added. That's why the model synthesis theory of evolution is incomplete. It needs more evidences. In a new environment, any new environment, new experiment can be added to that. It is not incorrect. So a population is evolving with all these four major forces are evolutionary agent, variation, drift, selection, as well as the migration. Depending on all these features, it's very, very difficult to predict the population, how it's evolving in nature. So, this is my group who have contributed for the site-based evolution, Harini, Prakash, and Major and the Vijaya, Ranjini, then Hirojit for the other one, Raviraj, then Kaushik, Stephanie, and Rajnikant. Mainly working on the site-based, but others also contributed. They are just looking for the genetic variation. All others have contributed genetic variation to understand the genetic phenomenon. Okay, these are majorly for site-based. So they came up with many questions that has helped us to think loudly and understand, and then made me to read more, understand this. So I think now it's time to stop. If you have any kind of suggestions or scientific questions, with it.
A large number of species in the animal world, even the plant world, particularly the invertebrates, which make up the largest number of species diversity, exhibit asexual reproduction. How does evolution work in asexual reproduction? When variation through genetic deformation is not possible.
So there again, it holds with the random walk. So because we are talking here sexually reproducing organism, this one. There also we cannot predict that. In sexual reproduction, we cannot. They work, and whatever is possible in a given environment. I don't think that this way we can explain that. Only we can say that again the random walk, sexual reproduction, whatever the given environment, all the organs survives, few survives, depending on.
Apparently, asexual reproduction is also selected by nature as one way to survive as a population. So, which means it must have its own survival value along with sexual. So it needs, I think, some more scientific insights into the mechanisms that will probably be operating the populations that exhibit this as an important mode of.
No, this principle also work with the sexual reproduction, the population also. But then again, it depends on when you do experimental population or natural population, it depends on all these factors, how they interact. But all these factors, in whether sexually reproducing, vegetative reproduction, or the asexual reproduction, they have to work. They are the forces, the agents in nature.
Thank you, sir, for explaining the value of technology.
Let others also, they're tired of listening to me or? Huh? Okay. I thought some students, first year students might attack me, ask me the questions. Well, whenever you have the questions, you can ask, you can discuss, you can learn.
Thank you, sir. Now I request JSL to announce the prize winners of poster competition.
So I have done my job, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. Professor Madhavi, Professor India, Dr. Shivananda, and my colleagues and students. As a part of the 213th birthday anniversary of Charles Darwin, in fact, we open gates for actually poster presentations. In fact, we were expecting more and more number of participants, but I don't make it possibly of time and the situation. We have been able to get only 11 posters for review. What I mean to say is to just to select the best one. So as I read earlier, what we have typically is, we are going to have first, second, and third prize, but because of the limited number of participants, so we have restricted to only one candidate, one participant out of 11. So we have actually received 11 posters from different parts of the country, especially from South India, mostly many of them. That is Aishwarya Deshpande, then Subhash, then Kirtana, then Sivan from our department, Rohini, and Varsha, Chintu Aditya, and Shakti Velu from Tamil Nadu, and Nityayati actually, maybe again from Tamil Nadu, I think so. Pavan and Janasevaka, the last one. So, in fact, all these 11 participants, they of course nicely displayed their posters, but we three, Professor Ramchandra, then Professor Shivananda, and myself were the judges, and definitely we have no other goal to just critically evaluate each and every posters. So the first posters we have shown all of them. Okay. So the winner one is why evolution is true. Why this particular poster actually fits the first prize. Very safe case from the PG Dual President College. So he placed the first prize. So definitely we don't know already we communicate to the participant, to the candidate, and also certificates to be sent to this one. And I also take this opportunity to thank judges who actually responded to our invitation and critically evaluated the posters. Right? So thank you one and all for this.
Sir, now I request Manjunath sir to give more.
First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to Professor Chairperson of the department for continuing the tradition of celebrating and remembering the nationalist Darwin's birthday on his birthday anniversary. And I would like to thank Professor N. V. Ramachandra sir for enlightening about the life and work of Darwin and faculty of genetics and genomics department, Professor T. Shivananda sir and Professor G. Subramanya sir, and our students, non-teaching staff, and the ICT and the media people for sharing the. Thank you.